The best two ways I know to tell right away whether a guy is OCD, sort of bottled up and anal about neatness, or just a slob, is to try to get into his pickup or walk into his shop. If the pickup has got candy wrappers and pop cans and tools on the floor and it hasn't been vacuumed out, oh, I don't know, maybe since Y2K, you know that guy doesn't spend any time worrying about combing his hair and maybe not brushing his teeth. Now that's going too far, but on the other hand, if you could drop a candy bar on the floor and pick it up and eat it, you know that this guy spends a lot of time keeping things nice. But neither of these environments tell you anything about whether A, he's a good driver and checks his oil weekly, or B, does he make anything in that shop that's worthwhile? Does he solve any problems? Does he have any shop skills? So the one initial first impression does not necessarily teach you anything about the man's capability. Anytime we are in our shop working, we are balancing our material budget, that is, how much can I spend on the stuff I'm cutting up to put together for whatever I'm making. We're balancing our tool resources, that is, do I have welders, do I have welding rod, do I have drill bits, do I have, I don't know, whatever it is. If you're doing lost wax casting, do I have the stuff that I use in the shop today? So you have the material and resource budget, you have the monetary budget for what you can acquire to do the job, and you have a time budget. You only have just so much time to produce the work that you have to produce. And so we are continually having to judge for ourselves how much of the allowable time we use straightening up the disorder that invariably happens when we're trying to get some work done. I've noticed for myself that as my work has changed from trying to produce the remodels and additions and houses and welding projects and blacksmithing projects that I used to take on for clients and get it out the door because they wanted it and they had given me a deposit and they were expecting delivery and I had to make my house payment. Because in those days, I had almost no discretionary time for cleaning up the mess. And boy, my shop showed it. On the other hand, after years of doing that, I've realized I have the habit of letting the debris accumulate and concentrating on the outcome. All right, fair enough. I've been in other shops. I'm thinking of some high-end machine shops or computer shops or artist studios where the time budget allowed a consistent maintenance of the environment. My wife is really good at cleaning up her cooking mess as Thanksgiving dinner springs into existence. And by about the time she puts that turkey on the table and the yams and it's all ready to eat and it's smoking hot and it's delicious, you look in the kitchen, there's very little sign of the great deal of work she went to make it happen, and I don't get it. I don't understand how she does it, but it's a habit. It's a habit I'm trying to acquire, but I refuse to feel guilty about not having that habit. So some of the best mechanics that I know, some of the most skilled tradesmen and craftsmen and blacksmith and woodworkers just leave piles of cut-off ends and tools and scale and sawdust in their wake. And then periodically, usually about Christmas, they clean it up enough to be able to do it for another year. On the other hand, some equally skilled tradesmen, as I've mentioned, keep a sterile, almost dental level of cleanliness shop. Here's the mistake that we all make. The slobs judge the OCD guys and the OCD guys judge the slobs. 'Tis a mistake. It is, I think, sort of in a microcosm, a big part of the reason our society's become so polarized on vastly more significant issues, because it reflects a tendency to either elevate ourselves or reduce someone else when they have something that we consider to be a bad habit. So a big question is, how much mess is okay? How much disorder should we accommodate in order to keep our creativity running? Well, that introduces another huge question, as questions often do, and that is, what compromise do I want in my life, or let's simplify it and just say in my shop, between chaos and order? Once again, I have been instructed by what Jordan Peterson has had to say about the tension between chaos and order. The tendency that lurks within order to tyranny, even if it's just the tyranny of the habit of sweeping the bench every time I go out of the shop and I can't go in for supper until that's a type of tyranny. Or the danger that lurks in the chaos And that is that pretty soon the chaos makes it impossible for the creativity that is possible in chaos to ever manifest, because we're bogged down, or we're hurt, or we're overwhelmed, or we can't remember. I'm reading the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin right now, and he comments on this point, that as a young man, he said he had an exceedingly good memory, and so he did not require great order in his workspace. Translation, he could remember where he dropped his stuff. And so the whole space was available to recall, and he could keep moving. If I ever had that, I'm losing it. I spend a lot of time wandering around this messy old shop wondering, now, where did I put that? And Franklin commented that as he got older, he had to list as one of his virtues that he pursued throughout his life, cleanliness and order. So we ask ourselves, or perhaps we ask our wives, is this just too messy? Now, how about this? For me, I've recognized that if I'm afraid to let my grandkids come in the shop, I better stop and clean it up. Because the risk element increases with disorder, doesn't it? But the risk of joylessness increases with order. I mean, if you are one of those people for whom every single thing must be in that thing's place, if you've got the outline of every tool marked on your pegboard rack, if you sweep the shop every night after you've done anything at all, if you find yourself tense when your grandkids come in because they're going to mess it up, then the tyranny has got a hold on your throat and you need to recalibrate. But on the other hand, if, as is sometimes the case for me, I panic because a grandkid got out here without any supervision because, something bad could happen, then it's time for me to stop the presses and get out here and change something. So it is a safe enough space, and it is inviting enough. And nobody has to walk in here worried that they're going to mess something up and be uninvited. So as I begin to wind this up, and you're probably relieved to hear that I'm doing that, a lot of these traits and characteristics are more nurture than nature, right? We kind of keep the same kind of shop that we went to when we were kids, if we were so lucky as to go into a shop. My good friend, Cy Swan's shop it's a hazard zone, many different kinds of hazards. But that old boy produces amazing work and amazing quantities of work. And let me just double down on this, that one aspect of craftsmanship is, doggone it, producing a body of work. No one is going to be considered few are going to be considered craftsmen if the number of completed projects that provided a benefit in other people's lives is single digits. You have to have taken a significant amount of material and reordered it into objects of utility and beauty to be considered a craftsman. And if your time budget is so heavily weighted to cleaning up the mess, my friends, think again. And on the other hand, if your time budget is so heavily weighted to just keep moving at any cost, and we will eventually, or perhaps never, establish any order around here, let's all think about that again. But the bottom line is this: our shops are a refuge. And if whatever it is about your shop is providing refuge and connection for you and other people, you're doing about right. And if it's not, you're not. So let's use that measuring stick, should we? Whether it's neat or sloppy, whether we are hoarders or minimalists, whether our tool budgets have enabled us to buy every conceivable piece of hardware, or if we just have a sparse collection of the minimum and medium quality tools that we need to barely get our chores done, doesn't much matter. What matters is the soul craft, stealing that from a very good book, Shop Class's Soul Craft, that goes on in a shop, is the real craftsmanship. So buy a broom if you don't have one. Don't worry about every crumb of dust. Filter the air if you have asthma. Grow a mustache if you don't. Whatever it takes to match your situation with your people and your skill set is probably what your shop should reflect. So now to bring this home and sort of identify for you what is on my radar as something that I need to fix with the chaos, because clearly I err on the side of disorder. I have two areas in the shop that are dangerous. One's really dangerous and one is slightly dangerous and temporary. The dangerous one is the place and the way that I store my high carbon steel and the remnant pieces of the mild steel sections that I have. It's a minefield and a death trap and a tiger trap. It's just, there are a lot of ways to get hurt anytime I go in there to sort through and find a piece of iron, or, as I often do, when I send a grandkid or a Boy Scout in there to get a railroad spike for a spike knife project. You gotta watch your step, and everything is sharp and pointy. I'm gonna clean that out and fix it. I have some lumber stacked back on the concrete walkway that came out of the area that I have upgraded in my wood shop. That's got to be put back in the wood shop for storage because it creates a balance and a falling hazard. That's coming up like this afternoon. But I have made some gains. I have moved my pressure system outside so an explosion can't kill anybody inside here. I have upgraded the wood shop specifically for space and for order and for light and for better tooling. I have bolt storage. I have taken junk out of shelves. I'm going to put doors on shelves and establish a French cleat system in my wood shop. So my floor is cleaner, my tools are more tidy, my fasteners are more cataloged, and gradually, bit by bit, I'm going to get entropy corralled a little, because it's always there. It's the wolf at the door, and it obsesses some of us, and some of us ignore it. And finding the right balance in every aspect of our lives is what we've got to do. Thanks for watching Essential Craftsman, and keep up the good work.